Anyway, so welcome team to this HP ALM live training. We are in day 1. So we just had one orientation session in Monday, basically on Monday, to look at it, understand what exactly this ALM stands for, what is the difference between the previous version of it, the quality center, and then the what is ALM. So quick recap from that was, we said Quality Center is a previous version of the ALM software from the same HP company. So where we had only a test management tool, but this is pretty much takes care of the entire application lifecycle management. So ALM stands for, as we said, application lifecycle management. What does that mean? Typically, you can think of any application. Think of any application software. So what you have is, you will have different phases of life cycle. Right from the first phase is where you have a requirements phase, followed by you will have a design phase, and then you will have coding, or what you call it as a build phase. Then you will have the testing phase. Some people also call it as stabilization phase. And then you will have, of course, UAT will be there. Finally, then you will have deployment. In order to prepare that, or in order to deploy it, so they will come up with something called builds. So they will, of course, when it's given for the testing itself, they will have to have some build mechanism. And finally, it will have maintenance. So these are the different phases of life cycle that any application that you can look at it in nowadays, you will have, these are the different phases of the life cycle. And when we say application life cycle management, we are looking at a software which will manage all these phases pretty much. Forget about maintenance. Maintenance is, maintenance also we can consider, because what is build? Yeah, I'll talk about all through the discussions. So, but pretty much what I'm trying to say is, think of any application software. If it has to be developed and handed over to the customer, it will have, these are the different phases. So quick introduction about each one of them. What happens during the requirements phase is that the if it is a typical waterfall model, you will have SRS, software requirement specification, or functional specification is prepared by the PM. In today's world, as part of the Agile, people will come up with something called user stories. So this is what happens during the requirements phase of the life cycle. If it is a typical waterfall model, there will be a detailed SRS or FS. And if it is a Agile model, you will have short user stories with a clear explanation of what users are expecting out of this application or this particular feature. Once the requirements are clearly understood by the engineering team means the project manager, the development team, testing team, operations team who will maintain our servers and hardware, things like that. Once those are all clear, then we'll get into something called design phase. And typically what happens in design phase is something called HLD, LLD, high level design, low level design. Probably, let me expand. High level design, then you will have low level design. These are all documents which will explain the architecture of your system. Nowadays, you think of any software, it will have a 3-layer of architecture. One is the top level, is the presentation layer, from where users will interact, like your browser or a web page from where users will interact. Think of any application in your mind. Suppose you have Amazon, .com. where you go search for the products and everything. That's what I'm talking about, is the presentation layer. And then below that, there will be a middle layer where the actual business logic happens. For example, if somebody is looking for certain category of the items, whether it is a valid category in our system or not, whether it's one of the predefined category or not. So along with that, some business rules will be defined in the business logic. Then comes the third level, is your database. All the products that we wanted to sell might be defined in the database, so it will go search in the database whether he is looking for the right category or not, and then list out all the items of that category. So typically any project will have a three-layer architecture. So that is explained at very high level what each architecture will do. But internally, going into more details, how each component is going to be developed, whether it is going to be a web service or Windows service, or whether it is going to be a technology on the cloud, that will be more of detailed explained in the low-level specification. And also, development team will prepare something called technical specification, in which they are going to talk about clearly what technologies they are going to use, in which technology they're using for SQL, whether it is a SQL Server or Oracle for database. For middle layer, is it going to be something like a WCF from Microsoft or some other technology? Then for UI, is it going to be a .NET, Silverlight? So all that will come into picture. So this is the same phase when the development team will prepare something called test plan. You can call it as master test plan. Okay, this is where the test team will come up with something called test plan, or you can call it as test strategy. Of course, test strategy is a subsection of test plan that most of the times we do. So that is what is the outcome from the testing team. How to test this product? Now we have understood the requirements clearly, so we have understood the design also from this phase. So we are in a better shape to come up with a plan or a strategy. How do we test it? Like, is it going to be only functional testing that I'm going to do, or I'm going to do functional and non-functional testing? Or will I have to do any security testing? Will I have to do any browser compatibility testing? So all that will be explained in master test plan. Then comes the build phase. So during the build phase is why I'm explaining all this, because the moment we start using the application lifecycle management, probably I keep getting the questions like when I will write test case, when I will write this and all. So I wanted to set the stage on this, the overall SDLC, so that you all will be clear on what we are going to do in the ALM as soon as we start using it. Okay, so coding or build phase is where the development team will be writing the code. So dev team prepares the code. Okay, code for each unit. So what they typically do is the big project will be divided into various modules. The modules will be divided into sub-modules, and each sub-module will be divided into a smaller unit. So when I say the unit, that is the least that we can divide. We cannot further divide the project into that. So that's what is meaning of unit. So examples, it could be a single form or a single page or a single screen. That is what you can call it as unit. So development team will prepare that unit, and they are also responsible for unit testing. Of course, before they do unit testing and all, they do code reviews, code inspections, and unit testing. These are all what they are supposed to do. Okay, what about the testing team? During the build phase, when the developers are writing the coding, what the testing team does? So testing team prepares the test cases. Okay, they will come up with test cases. Test cases which includes positive, negative, all kinds of test cases for functional testing, for non-functional testing, whatever you have planned, whatever you thought you will do it in the test plan or your test strategy, for each of that you will prepare your test cases and test scenarios. Of course, to do the right testing, you will also be using the right data. For example, if I have a typical yeah, I'll just quickly talk about that. So typically think of any e-commerce application or a banking application. Unless you test with the data which is pretty much similar to the real data. For example, if I have account number, I need to test with at least a 12-digit account number, right? And if there is a particular number in that particular format, I have to test with that kind of a data. I cannot just with some 4-digit or 5-digit number and I cannot say, yeah, it's working fine. No, I have to simulate with the real data, which pretty much similar to the real data I need to prepare. So I will be spending some time on test data preparation. So when all this happens during the coding phase or the build phase when my developers are busy in writing the code. So Shafiq, you wanted to understand users. It is something like this. So user stories typically, there are different tools available for writing these user stories. Like again, Microsoft Visual Studio is one of them. HP, ALM. I would not say there is something called user story directly, but yeah, your requirement can be drafted as a user story. So typically, how it will be there is like explanation of a story, something like when a real user, SRS or FS stands for Software Requirement Specification. Okay, Software Requirement Specification. FS stands for Functional Specification. There are different names people use it, so I'm just trying to put possible ones, all possible ones. So yeah, what I was saying about user stories is it will be in a format where clearly a story is explained as if like a real user using your system. Think of like this. Suppose you go to any e-commerce application as a user and you are in searching of some electronics product. So how do you do that? Okay. Is this SDLC you're explaining? Yeah, Riaz, why I'm explaining all this, because the moment we start the application lifecycle management, we will be start using to put all these into the tool where we will be creating the project, and then we will be immediately going into the application lifecycle management. So I do not want to hear the questions on like how does a requirement look like or what is requirement. Some of the basic questions that I got it previously, so I'm just quickly touching upon this. What exactly the application lifecycle? SDLC application lifecycle is the same, and because what we're talking about is software development lifecycle for any type of an application, and this tool, application lifecycle management tool, will help you in managing all the phases of these lifecycle. Basically, to maintain all these artifacts which you will be preparing throughout SDLC in the tool. So, is that clear? Yes. Okay, so the user story will typically have an explanation of how a real user coming into the system, searching for a product, and how does he navigates and he searches and things like that. And when he is looking for a particular product, what is our system should return. So those are all explained in the user story with a clear, roles. Who is going to be the user, who is going to be the administrator of the system, who is going to be, what are the different products that we are offering, with a clear accepted criteria. Like when we develop this user story, what is the criteria for the users to accept the system, for our customers to accept the system. So that explanation will be there in the user story. A simple table kind of a format generally people will explain, and what is the system, who are the users, what they are going to do. A small story will be explained with a clear acceptance criteria. If we implement, these are all should work. So that is what explained in the user story. But now you can think of requirement. Okay, so this is what happens during the coding phase. And once the coding is completed, as we said, they are also going to do unit testing. So now it will be given for the testing team. So when it is given for the testing team, what are we going to do it? The testing team, so here coding is completed, fine, but how will you give it to the testing team? So in a way, a lot of companies treat the testers also as the customers from developers perspective. When they complete the coding, they cannot just hand over the code as it is to the testing team. So what they have to do, they have to convert it into a build. They have to convert it into a build, which is something like you can install. The testers can install it on their test management tools or test tools. So what the development team does is, as soon as they complete the code, they will be converted into a proper, let me put it over here. They will convert into a proper build or exe file, which we can install it, right? We talked about different layers of system. What does that falls in HLD, LLD? So I said high level design and low level design, a pictorial representation of something like, what is the input to my system and what is my system is going to do and what is the output system. Simple diagram representing input to the system and the actual system itself, and then finally what is the output. Very high level with a 3-layer architecture is normally explained in HLD. In LLD, what happens, they will go more detail about, it's a kind of flowcharts, correct. It's a kind of flowcharts. In LLD, they will go more about each component. For example, when you go search for a product, which component will work in our system for searching it? They might have written some function or they might have written some method, and that method will go to the database, search it and display all the products that are available. So explaining detail each feature done by which component in the low level design. Low level design is like internal design basically. That is more of from the developer's perspective. They will do it, but it is very important to understand by the test team so that we can come up with our best strategy for the testing of it. Specifications to test a functionality. That is, specifications to test a functionality is more of a functional specification. Is it, low level design. LLD is low level design, correct. Okay, so once the coding is completed, they will prepare a proper build or exe file. Then the test team, what they do is, if it is a Windows application, they will install it. If it is a web application, they will browse to that URL and start testing it. So during the testing phases where you will actually do the test execution, or I would say execution of test cases. So test cases execution. But actually, before, again, when the developers are writing the code, what we can also do is, who is going to execute what test cases? So we can also do something called test cases, I would say test cases mapping to the testers basically. So test cases assignment to the testers. Who is going to execute which test cases? So that is also, we can be ready and have a clear plan. And also we need to have other things, more of a ALM perspective. If I'm talking about how many test cycles we are going to prepare. So how many cycles of testing we should do. Whether we're going to do 2 cycles or whether we're going to do only 1 cycle, all that is explained in the test cycles part of it. Yeah, use case and user story are different. User story is pretty much like a requirement, what you wanted to build, and use case is pretty much how the user is going to, how a user will use that particular feature, right? This is more of a requirement perspective, and this is more from a before you actually writing the test cases, we normally prepare a use case and then based on that you do the test case. They are different. So user story and use case are different. What do you mean by test cycle, please? So when you get the build, Resvi, so for example, I have total of 500 test cases. Let's say, assume that for this particular project, I have got total 500 test cases. Whether these 500 test cases, will I be running only one time, or will I be executing them all 500 one time, but one more cycle where I will be testing the high priority ones, maybe 100 or 200 which are high priority ones, or maybe I will be repeating all the 500 again. So that is like completing all 500 one time, one cycle. So you want to go about only one cycle of testing, 2 cycles of testing is what? Is test cycle. Typically in a enterprise applications, it is suggested that at least one cycle you have to complete, otherwise you cannot really sign off the product or project. But they go about second cycle also, in the second cycle where they will run at least the priority ones. Okay, fine. So this is where they will actually be doing the test case execution. Not only test case execution, while executing test cases, they will have to map test case results tracking, whether they are passing or fail. And if anything is failed, then they will be doing the defect logging or defect management, I would say, where you log a defect, it goes to the development team will fix it, again you will retest it or regression test. Regression test is the right term. You do regression testing, I will put that. So you do regression testing, and if it is working fine, you will close the defect. If it is not working fine, you will reopen the defect. So you do all that during the testing phase of the life cycle. And why we are calling it as stabilization? By finding all the defects in the system, you are actually stabilizing the product, stabilizing the application. So that's why it's called stabilization, right? So this is what you do, regression testing. For example, you have tested out of 500, let's say you tested 100 test cases or all 500 test cases, and then you find some bugs. When you find those bugs, what happens? Your development team will fix them. After fixing them, we have to verify whether they are working fine or not, right? So testing of that is called regression testing. When there is any change in the code, so when the development team will fix it, they will again prepare a new build. It will not be the same build. For example, first time you have got a build, let's say 1.0. After you find some bugs, when they fix it, you're not going to get the same build again. You will get 1.1. After some more bug fixes, you will get 1.2. So like this builds will go on. So testing it on the new build is basically the regression testing. Testing on the same build, suppose you tested on 1.0, you did not find any bugs, and you wanted to re-verify that, that is called retesting. If you're testing it on the same build, it's called retesting. If you're going to test it on a different build with some modification, that's called regression testing. Clear? So you do regression testing, and you'll, if they are working fine, you'll close it. If they're not working fine, you will reopen the defect. Defect close or reopen defect. So this is what you will do during the testing phase of the life cycle. You will do all that until all the test cases are completed, until all the defects are closed. You will do the testing. But once all the test cases are over, once all the defects are closed, that's when you will say the system is very stable. A general definition, right? What is stabilization? The product is stable, that's all. Because as soon as you get the code from the development team or the build from the development team, most how about it now? Can you hear me? Okay, thanks. So it's pretty much like your when you get the new build from the development team, most of the times it will be in a very unstable state, because just a lot of code is completed, clubbed into one single product, so it will be very unstable. And as a testing team, we are eliminating all the bugs and making it stable. That's why it's called stabilization. Okay, so after that what happens? It goes to the customers and they will do user acceptance. They will do user acceptance. Nothing but what is user acceptance? Pretty much like what we have done the testing, they will also do the testing. Definitely it's not that elaborate as what we have done. If I have 500 test cases, probably they will have some 50 or 100 test cases to do the testing, and then they will decide whether to accept the build or not to accept the build. If they find any issues, again we will go back, we'll do the coding, we'll do the testing, again we'll come back and give it to them. So that process will continue for every issue that they find. So let us assume user acceptance test is completed and they're ready to accept the product. That's when we'll go deploy in production. That is when we will go deploy it in production or live environment. And from there onwards, typically which happens on the weekends when the system are not very actively used by, depends on the application. Some systems are very active on weekends, some systems are not active on weekends, depending on the type of the application. After that it goes for a maintenance, typically maybe depending on the life cycle. Suppose you have done the whole project in 6 months, then there might be a 1 month of warranty. But if you have done a agile of 1 month project itself, then there might be 1 week of warranty, right? So what does that mean? Typically if they find any issues, we'll provide a free of cost fix for those applications during the maintenance. But if the customers are asking anything new, any new feature, then we'll charge for it and then we'll implement it. So this is how typically any application will be developed. Right from the requirements, it goes to design, it goes to coding, then testing, UAT, deployment, and maintenance. Whether you do this project, all the phases, whether you do it in 6 months, which is called waterfall kind of a model. See, waterfall is one SDLC model. Riyaz, you get it, right? So this is whatever I have explained is SDLC. I'm exactly covering the same point, just be patient. If you are taking this same phases in 6 months or 1 year and you develop a big system, that is more of a waterfall kind of a feature, okay, waterfall kind of a model. But nowadays it's not going to work because no project can go such longer because of the dynamic environments that we are in. And today's world, mostly what we're going to do is we try to do the things very faster in agile model, where in agile model typically the project goes in different sprints. So it's developed in different sprints, and typically the life cycle for the sprint is anywhere from 6 weeks. Some companies it's 4 weeks. In some companies it's just 1 week. In some companies it's just 1 day. What does that mean? For example, I currently run 4 weeks of sprints. So in this, what happens? We get the user stories from the customers in the 0th week, which we will analyze and come up with, basically we analyze those user stories and have our plan prepared, and within the 4 weeks we will deliver it, doing all the design, coding, testing, everything will deliver it in 4 weeks. But if somebody is running a 1 week, what does that mean? Monday morning they will get a requirement. By Friday they will have to deploy into production. In case of 1 day, morning they will get a requirement. Every day morning they'll get requirement, and they just analyze it for maybe in 1 hour, design for 1 hour, and simple ones. And then 2 hours of coding, 2 hours of testing, and then 1 hour of deployment. So by evening it will be in production. So depending on the nature of the project, you run different models. But all previous models were more of waterfall models. They used to go for anywhere from 6 months, 1 year. Even I have run about 2 years of project also around 5 years back. So that kind of long projects that will happen there. But no more a case in now, because we are very in agile dynamic environment. So we wanted the things or deliverables to be faster because no customer wants to wait. What happens in 4 weeks of sprint starting from first week? Typically you will get the user stories. Pretty much before you start the first week itself, you'll get user stories. Okay, so then in the maybe first 1 week, they will complete the design, how it should be, the LLD, what components we have to develop, what technologies we have to use, and then the testing team will come up with a they may or may not write test plan also. So if it is a probably what they can do for the one project, they can have one test plan, not for every sprint, and they can simply come up with a strategy. Rather, instead of the detailed plan, they can come up with a strategy in the first week itself. Second week they will start the coding. That's when you will be writing your test cases. You will be preparing your data and everything. Maybe mid of third week or end of third week. End of third week will be too late. Mid of third week you get a build, and then you will test it for about 4 working days, 5 working days, depending on how many test cases and how much team you have. And then you will do defect logging and regression testing of them when there is a fix. The end of fourth week is when you should give it to at least to UAT, or some companies they will directly do it in production deployment itself. So that's what typically happens. Test team is going to prepare the data. So in Agile, whether we prepare the test plan or not, a lot of companies will not do that. So they will just come up with a quick strategy. I think, yeah, they'll just come up with a quick strategy. Test plan you can just do for one project, one test plan. See, there is a concept saying Agile is where you can have no documentation, which is not correct. I would not say no documentation. It's of less documentation. Do as much as less documentation. It's not that no documentation. In some projects, if you have to prepare a test plan, do prepare a test plan. But in some projects, if it is not required, don't prepare. Hey, really sorry to cut short on a lot of questions because these are all very fundamental questions. The orientation I have explained that you should have an idea about what is requirements and all that. My suggestion is go through the QA videos that are prepared by Karthik on SDLC, understanding what is requirement, test plan, test strategy to set you the context. Otherwise also, like, basically I have covered it in most of my previous videos also. You can go through them to understand the test plan and test strategy. But other folks like, or else what we can do, in ALM you don't prepare the test plan like a manual testing. We use the term test plan, but it will be slightly different what we're going to do in ALM. Okay, so it should be clear by the time when we talk about that. Okay, just keep it. Let me look at other questions. Okay, this is more of the questions are more of going in a direction where what is the difference between waterfall and agile. I think we can talk about that in one whole session, but I have explained a little difference. This is a very lengthy project where you have a proper detailed documentations, very detailed design, coding, testing, everything happens. These are all short span of cycles where people say less documentation. Probably you can avoid some documentation, but deliverables to be very faster. So that's what they'll say. So with this, what I can do, I'll introduce to the quality center or the ALM tool itself. So any questions on this waterfall, whatever I've kind of explained? Okay, now let's talk about, so to do this kind of projects, right, you might have a team, all the teams sitting at one place, or you might have project managers. That's okay, Sifa. So people will have questions, but yeah, I will definitely try to answer some of them which are very important and for us ALM to continue. But if something is going to take time, then probably I will guide you to the right place where you can search it. Is ALM used in both the models or any? No, actually ALM typically for waterfall, but we can customize it a little bit. That's what I'm going to do in my examples. We can customize a little bit to use it for agile. Okay, I will try to use it for mostly on the agile so that you can be ready with the new generation of life cycle. Okay, so next, coming to it, what I was trying to say is no, to develop these kind of projects, the whole project team, the engineering team, engineering and business rather, they might be scattered across different geographic locations. For example, my business, suppose they are in US, my PM, engineering PM, let's say he or she is in UK, and my development team, for example, development team, let's say in Singapore, and my test team for this project, let's say they are in India, or I would say it's a mix of them. Some of the business folks in US, PM is in UK, some dev team is in Singapore and India. Let me just put it like that, Singapore and India. Some test team is again in India and Singapore. So the question is, where do we maintain all these documents, be it requirements document, design document, the actual code of the project, the testing artifacts like test cases, test data, defects, where do we maintain all that? So we need some central location, right? We need some central repository. We need some central repository for maintaining all the artifacts. We can call them as artifacts of development lifecycle, of this application lifecycle. Let's start using the right term for that, application lifecycle. So throughout this application, you're going to develop so many things. So the question is, where do you maintain all that? So we need some central repository, typically a web application kind of thing, where all these people can connect it and access those information, be it a requirement or user story, be it a test case, be it a defect, they all should be able to access. So teams are looking some central repository where they can maintain all that. So towards that solution, we have different, so this is where it's called application lifecycle management, because we are managing all these artifacts in a central location which can be accessible by everyone in the project, and 24/7, right? 24/7, and it should be very secure. It's not that anybody can access it. It should be very secure, because the project test cases or project requirements are very confidential, so it cannot be accessed outside of the team. So we are looking for some kind of a central repository tool. So that is where the application lifecycle management tools, I'm not saying HPLM, still I'm not talking about HPLM. I'm talking about some management tool where you can use all these documents. So towards that direction, these tools have developed. What are those tools? Definitely HPLM is one of them. HPLM is one of them. From Microsoft, I don't know how many of you have heard about this tool called Team Foundation Server with Microsoft Test Manager is one of them. Yeah, Team Foundation Server with Microsoft Test Manager. And recently this one, they removed Team Foundation Server and they have put all that into a cloud called Visual Studio Online. Visual Studio Online with MTM. So this is one thing. And some of you are saying Zira and Rational Manager from IBM. There is a tool called Rational Manager from IBM. There is a tool called Silk Manager from Segway. There are different solutions towards this. Okay. So to maintain all these artifacts, teams need of some central repository, and those are all, you can call it as application lifecycle management tools. And these are some of the products that we have, and this is our focus. In this course, what we're going to talk about is the HPALM, right? So let's focus more on HPALM tool. So quick introduction about this is, as we have been naming it, it is developed by HP. Actually, to start the whole history, it is developed, but those are all not very important. It is developed by a company called Mercury Interactive as Test Director way back in 2003 time. So they have something called Test Director. I know from almost Test Director 5.0, 6.0 onwards. So it was developed as Test Director, and then but it was more of a Windows application. You need to install that on your machine as a Windows application and all that. But over a period of time, it has been evolved into web application. So this was more of a Windows application. But over a period of time, they have converted into a web application. In Test Director 7.0, they have converted into web application. I think that's exactly when around 5-6 years back, it's taken over by HP. So that's when the Mercury Interactive company taken over by HP. So from there onwards, these are all HP products, and they are maintaining it as their own property tools, and they have made a lot of advancements. It was only a test management tool. That's why you can see the name called Test Director. It was only for test management. And now it is more of a complete application lifecycle management. Okay, so it is an HP product. Probably will complete the statement like it is a product from HP, and the history we're talking about developed by Mercury Interactive. Okay, now what we'll go a little more introduction to it. It is a product from HP. Then we'll say it is used for the complete application life cycle management. Now somebody is asking on the chart, what is the difference between application lifecycle management and defect management? Defect management is just one small section which only takes care of defects. Application lifecycle management, which takes care of all this, right from your requirements, design, coding, testing, everything. Defect management is only this part. Okay, like Bugzilla and all that. Is it possible to install TFS on our laptops? We are talking about Microsoft TFS. Yes, you can install. You need a server to do that. It's totally a different topic altogether, Vijay. Like you can, but you can do it if you have a server. You don't need to do it now because they have already came with a cloud version of it, so you can try that. Just go to microsoft.visualstudio.com. Okay, you don't need to install TFS at all now. Okay, so where are we? So it's used for the complete application lifecycle management. It provides high security for all the artifacts. So when I say, we're going to see the tool quickly in 4 to 5 minutes from now, wherein there is a way you can restrict the users. Suppose only your project team can access your project data, not the other project team. So that way it's a high security for all your artifacts, because typically in one company you might be dealing with different clients, and some of the clients might say, hey, mine is a banking related application where you deal with credit card information and all that. It should be very, very secure. So the authorization or access giving rights is with the clients. Only when they check the proper employees and their background verification, then only they'll get access. So all that you can actually do with authorization part of it, so you can very securely maintain all artifacts. And as most of you are asking, defect management and all, it has inbuilt defect management also, so you don't need to really use other defect management tools like Bugzilla or Zero or any other thing. You can maintain all your defects here, and it is so web application which can be accessed from anywhere. So today you are in, let's say, India office, and next week you might be in Singapore office, or next week you might be in US office. So you can access from anywhere as long as you're connected to the corporate network. So you can access it from anywhere. You don't need to really install something on your local machine or things like that. So it can be accessed from anywhere as long as you're connected to the corporate network. The another very important point is it can generate the reports and graphs just click of a button. Now we are going to maintain all these artifacts in a very proper way from the day one of the project. If somebody looking for a status, for example, I'm a test manager and looking for the status of my team, how much testing is completed, how much testing is pending, how many defects they found, how many of them are severity 1s, how many of them are severity 2s. If I wanted to quickly check, I don't need to go to each of my team member and ask the status. I'm also connected to this ALM tool. I'm also a member of it. I can generate a report. I can generate a graph. I'm good. I will know the status of the whole team. Similarly, each individual can generate their own reports, their own graphs through this tool. So this is a quick introduction of the tool. And what are the components of this ALM tool? Primarily, you as a test engineer, you will be working with two major components. Can I install ALM tool on my machine? I'll talk about this in 5 minutes. Nitin, once we have the little bit of introduction, today I'll talk about it. Components of ALM. So it has the ALM. So first one is something called a site administrator. Second one is the ALM, the actual application lifecycle management. They have introduced one more component called lab management. But this is more of continuous. I don't know how many of you have heard about this one. I'll talk about this in detail in the next class. Something called continuous integration and continuous deployment. This is the buzzword in the industry now, something called CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment, where companies are targeting to release daily to the customers in such a way that every day evening some code bits will go into the production. Towards that direction, they came up with something called lab management, where you can integrate your automation code. If you have any automation code in QTP UFT or load runner for performance testing or any other tool, you can integrate that with your quality center and you can start automatically running it and all that. I will be talking about this little later in the sessions, but the first two are the primary focus where you will be actually, or you are going to work as a test engineer. Can you please talk? Yeah. We'll be talking about version control system when we enable it, Resvi. So this one is where all the testers are going to work. Testers, all the project people will be working it. So this can be integrated with Jenkins. That's what I have seen. So once it is there in Jenkins, so you might have integrated your Selenium with Jenkins, and that's how it will work. Okay. Are you going to share this video? Yes. Why not? So this will be available for all the participants. Okay. So let me quickly introduce to the tool. So let's talk about. I'll be talking about these individual components more in detail in the next class, but I'll just quickly show you what is the site administrator and how you do it. So hope you all can see my screen, right? So once the software is properly installed, this is how you will browse it, HTTP or HTTPS with the server name. So this is how typically the URL of your quality center, or not quality center, the ALM tool. So this is the server where your ALM software is installed, and this is the port number, and it will have QC bin directory, quality center bin directory. This is just an extended version of quality center, so they are not changed at the bin directory level and all yet. Even though name and UI has been changed to application lifecycle management, but a lot of internal things are still pointing to quality center. Mostly in real time you will have HTTP or HTTPS, and this quality center is available in client server mode. So you will install the server version on the server side and client version on the client side. From client you will be accessing the server. So right now I have everything on the same machine, and then as some of you have asked, the installation part of it, I'll show you my computer properties. Right now I'm showing you all that from a Windows Server 2008 R2 Enterprise. Typically I'm working on a server. So if somebody wanted to install this software, you need a server machine. You cannot do it on your laptops. You can do it on your laptops if you have server operating system on your laptop, not like a Windows 8 or Windows 7 professional operating systems. I would say installation is lengthy but not very difficult. The difficult part here is having hardware. Okay, so you need, let me complete this one. So you need to have at least Windows Server 2008 R2 if you wanted to go for 11.5.2. If you want to go with the latest one, which is very latest, very doubt on the real time how many of them are using, because we are still using 11.5.2. If somebody wanted to install the 12.0, you need to have Windows Server 2012, not even 2008. So you need to have 2012. That is one part of it. Second part of it is, look at my RAM, installed RAM on this machine. It's 16 GB. You would need at least 8 GB for installation only. So when I say 8 GB is required for installing the software, your laptop or desktop should support something beyond 12 GB, beyond 8 GB, something like 12 GB or 16 GB you should have. So I have hired or rented a desktop exclusively for this purpose, right? Guess the use may not be different. What is that? ECDL, can you please elaborate your question? I did not get. Actually, you asked about what is the difference between 10.0 and this one, right? There are few differences. If you know 10.0, when I have explained this latest version, you would come to know few differences. But if you have 10.0, my suggestion is practice on that only. Don't even try to install this one, because first of all, you would need this hardware. So you would need at least 12 GB RAM. That is another point. And on this machine only, we will install SQL Server also. What about the server GB? Yeah, at least 8 GB is a minimum required. No, Reena, absolutely no way. I have tried all that. Yeah, if you have laptop which is 12 GB or something, let me know. I will tell you the way. But I'm very doubtful how many of you have personal laptops with 12 GB, right? So this is where I hired one desktop with this one, 16 GB, exclusively for this one. So in real time, no problem, because servers will be there and they'll deploy it on the servers. It will be easy. Another advantage I can tell you, get trained on it, be ready with the concepts. Very soon we will get, already link is there on the HP site, but they are not giving it for everyone today, the cloud version of it. Very soon you will have the cloud version of it as a public. And that time everybody can go create their own projects and everything in the cloud. You don't need to install anything for that matter. Whether they'll take 3 months, 6 months, I cannot comment on that. But there is a link already available for cloud version. I already registered for it, and I spoke to the HP people from UK. They said as of now they are giving it only for the people who will really buy it. For even training purpose or whatever the purpose, they are not giving it as a free. They wanted to give it to only people who will really buy it. So, but very soon you will get it to hear from the cloud version of it as a free. That's when you can actually go all can try this one. Okay, so and another point that I would need is you need to install SQL Server also on the same machine. SQL Server 2012 if you want to go for ALM 12. If you want to go for the previous version of it like 11.5.2, then you need a SQL Server 2008. So you would need to first install Windows Server on this machine, then you will install SQL Server on the machine, then you are ready to go for ALM installation. And ALM installation is, it's around 3-4 hours of time. Correct. First step is installing Windows Server, second step is installing SQL Server, third step is installing ALM. I'll do one thing, I will share you one link, somebody very clearly articulated in a blog. I'll share that link with all of you. I have used the same thing and it's pretty much installable. I'll share that link, then you can take some time to decide on the hardware, whether you have the hardware or not. If you have it, you let me know. I can explain you the steps from that log. Okay. Anyway, let me just quickly walk you through the site administrator for today. I'll take another 5 minutes of your time. So I clicked on the site administrator part. So what I did, I went to this URL. Then it was listing out site administrator, ALM, and all that. I just clicked on site administrator. Then I am landed here in the administration page. Typically there will be a username and password, but while installing it I did not set any password for this. It's only admin. I click on the login part, and some of you have attended my 10.0 version. So what you should do is, before the next one starts, please go through those. I think we have some time. I don't remember the schedule right now because I am traveling in between for a couple of days. So there is some 3 or 4 days, definitely you'll get some time. Go through my 10.0 videos. That will give you a clear picture of it. If you have attended the 10.0, you have seen all this except lab management. So, but otherwise, I will be detailed explaining. For the rest of the folks who have not attended 10.0, I will be covering every single point. So once I'm in site administration, you can see site projects, lab management, site users, site connections, licenses, servers, DB servers, site configuration, and all that. Yeah, Rizvi, I'm actually kind of traveling in between. But from that date onwards, you will have 90-minute session, not even 60 minutes, because another bad part of this is this software will expire on 29th. So in 9 days, we will be covering. Yeah, I will do it. I will do it in detail. I will assume. But what is my suggestion for you, Sal? Like, there are some videos available. You will get an access to them. You please go through all those videos. Okay. There are about 10 days of videos are available, 1 hour session. Please go through them. It's for everyone. Just go through them. It will be easy for you to attend my next sessions. Yeah, please go through them. Once you finish it, go through QC. Yes, go through QC videos. When we have the next one, then it will be, everything will be eased out for you. But even then, I'll deal with in detail. Sure. Okay, so what you can do in the administrator part is you can create a domain for your project. You can create a project itself, and then you can add your users who are going to be part of this project. You can assign the passwords for them, and you can check the license expiration dates and when the license got installed and everything. Administrator, if you're talking about, rather, yes. Administrator, if you're talking about, only this one. But when we go to the ALM, there are differences. Probably I'll quickly show that also. Why should I leave that? I'll just quickly show that also for you, and then you can take a call on that. So let me go to application lifecycle management. I just pick up some project and all. If you don't know, nothing to worry. Today I'm just kind of showing you the software, but the next session onwards we'll go in detail each of these components. There's a whole lot of differences you can see right from, if you remember, we had only the requirements one, testing one with only test plan, then we had defects one, right, in the 10.0, and then we had the dashboard with only one option. So there are differences. So there is something called dashboard with analysis and dashboard view, management for all your resources, libraries, and things like that. Then we have requirements section, then we have lab resources for. But again, as a test engineer, let me tell you, you will be working majorly on the requirements one, the testing one, defects one, and you will be working on dashboard. Other things is mainly for the overall life cycle level. This is more of a development team perspective, the builds and the code changes which I have talked about. application components module is where you can see what are the components of it. So here we'll start with from this phase where we'll be creating different releases, and within the releases we'll create different cycles, and then we'll come to requirements, and then we'll create test cases, we'll be executing them, and then we'll be logging the defects. So there are differences, right? So this is a quick preview of the software that I wanted to show it today. Okay, so any questions on this one? In the next session, I will be starting with the site administrator part of it. No, so it will be on uploaded onto the ALM website, Reena. So from there you need to watch it. Okay. Some of the things that for promoting purpose, we'll put them on the YouTube. Hopefully this one also will go into YouTube, but mostly it will be there on the ALM website. So Resvi, this is 11.5.2. This is the one. Just V-1. Current version is 12.0, and this is a -1. There again, not much difference. Why they have installed the 12.0? I'll explain. As Microsoft Windows, the next versions of Windows Server, SQL Server, to support that, they have to come up with 12.0. Not major differences between 11.5.2 and this one. Okay. So that's the thing that I have taken. Fine. So any other questions, team, before we wind up today's session? So in the next one, we'll be actually starting with the creating of the project, creating of the domain, and then we'll come back and start using the ALM for creating all our releases and everything. But my strong recommendation is go through 10.0 videos. That will ease out your job of understanding it. Okay. Any other questions that you have for today? From where can I view previous videos? So once you complete your administration things and all, the technical team will give you the access. So they'll give you user ID password from which you can access them. So Ruby, I think somebody just told it's on 20th. I think that's the correct one because I'm just traveling in between. Otherwise, we would have started continuously. I'm traveling for about a week or so. Once I come back, we will have to do that. And for installation, another important point is whatever you do like this, even if you set up a hardware, even if you set up your Windows system and all that, this license is going to be available for only for 30 days. Okay. So just think about it whether you want to really install it or not. My suggestion is attend the live trainings with the latest version. Practice on 10.0. That should be much more sufficient for your testing career. Because this entire application is dealing with so many things. So as a test engineer, if you are comfortable with all the 10.0 features, you are good actually. Because from 10.0 to this one, they made a lot of changes in terms of the overall application. Something about virtual hard drive, no, absolutely not possible for this one. I've tried all these days for that, and the reason because virtual machine can accept a maximum of 5 GB. We need at least 8 GB to install. So hope you all understand that, right? So I tried all this for doing all these days, and I was not only me, nobody else can do that on a virtual machine because it's accepting only 5 GB max. What does that standard to? I'm not getting it. Shafiq, I'm not clear on your comment. Is it standard to? What is that name that I should write?